X equals what? The question lingered in the air like a challenge, scrawled boldly in dry erase marker across the whiteboard. The numbers and letters blurred together in Jamal Carter's mind. His hand clutched the marker tighter, knuckles whitening. Sweat formed at his temple, and for a moment, all he could hear was the hum of the overhead lights and the ticking of the classroom clock. And then, like thunder after lightning, it started. A giggle. A snort. Then laughter. First from the back of the room, then the sides, then a crescendo as the entire class erupted. Even Marcus, who Jamal thought might have had his back, shook his head and chuckled into his hoodie sleeve. Jamal stood there, paralyzed, staring at the equation. 3x, 4 equals 2x plus 7. He'd seen this before. He knew he had. But right now, it might as well have been in ancient Greek. Come on, bro, someone said from the back. You don't even know that one. Did he forget how to subtract? A girl added, her voice laced with sarcasm. The worst part? Ms. Thornton didn't stop them. Not right away. She stood silently at her desk, arms crossed, just watching. Observing. Almost like she wanted to see what Jamal would do. Or maybe she already knew what would happen. And in that moment, Jamal Carter wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? He dropped the marker. It clattered to the floor, a hollow plastic echo that only added to the humiliation. Ms. Thornton finally stepped forward. All right, everyone. That's enough, she said, voice calm but firm. You're not here to perform. You're here to learn. And that means getting things wrong sometimes. Jamal lowered his head and returned to his seat, trying to melt into his chair. His eyes stung, but he refused to blink. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him cry. Not again. Later that day, Jamal sat alone in the cafeteria, poking at a slice of overcooked pizza. He could still hear the laughter in his ears, the smirks carved into his classmates' faces like stone. They wouldn't forget. High school was cruel like that. You looked like you were about to pass out up there, Marcus said, dropping into the seat across from him. His tone was joking, but there was something sharp under it. Jamal didn't look up. I blanked. Whatever. Man, that wasn't blanking. That was crash and burn, Marcus said, half laughing, half serious. Jamal clenched his jaw. Thanks, bro, real supportive. Marcus shrugged. Just saying. Maybe math ain't your thing. Maybe it wasn't. Or maybe, just maybe, Jamal had believed that lie for so long it started to feel like truth. After school, Jamal lingered outside his algebra class. The hallway was nearly empty, just the hum of vending machines and the distant thud of lockers slamming shut. He peeked through the small glass window in the classroom door. Ms. Thornton was packing up, flipping through papers, the last rays of afternoon sun stretching long across the floor. He hesitated, then knocked twice. Ms. Thornton looked up. Jamal. Come in. He opened the door slowly, stepping inside like the room might still bite. I just wanted to say sorry. For earlier, he mumbled. She studied him for a moment, then shook her head. Don't apologize for trying. I didn't even get to the first step. They were laughing before I could even breathe. That's their problem. Not yours, she said, matter-of-factly. Can I ask you something? Jamal nodded. Do you want to get better at math? He hesitated. No one had asked him that before. Not seriously. Not without some hidden insult behind it. I guess. Yeah. But I'm just not good at it. Ms. Thornton pulled a chair beside hers and motioned for him to sit. You're not good at it yet. Big difference. That night, Jamal walked home instead of taking the bus. The cool Atlanta breeze brushed against his cheeks, and the city lights blinked dimly in the distance. He passed the gas station where his mom sometimes worked nights, the corner store where Layla begged for bubblegum on weekends, and the empty basketball court that used to be his escape. Used to be. Lately, it felt like nothing was his anymore, not the respect of his peers, not confidence, not even the right to raise his hand in class without fear. When he got home, the lights were off. He tiptoed into the kitchen, dropped his backpack, and opened the fridge. 3 slices of leftover lasagna. A half-gallon of milk. And a note stuck on the fridge with a magnet. Work late again. Kiss Layla goodnight for me. Love you always, Mom. He closed the fridge and sighed. In the living room, Layla was asleep on the couch, blanket halfway slipping off. He tucked it around her carefully. Love you, kiddo, he whispered. Then he sat at the kitchen table, pulled out his algebra workbook, and stared at the first equation. 3x, 4 equals 2x plus 7. The same one that started it all. And for some reason, this time, he didn't look away. The sound of sirens wasn't out of place in Jamal's neighborhood. They came and went like wind, loud, fast, and never stopping long enough to care what they left behind. Jamal Carter lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a rundown complex in southwest Atlanta. Cracked paint on the walls, a front door that needed 2 hard pulls to shut properly, and a heater that only worked when you didn't need it. His world was small. But it was full. His mom, Denise Carter, was the kind of woman who never sat down for long. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Morning shifts at the diner downtown, overnight cleaning gigs at the hospital, and on weekends, she braided hair in their kitchen for neighbors who couldn't afford a salon. She loved hard and didn't have time for nonsense. But when it came to Jamal and his little sister Layla, her heart softened just enough. I may not have much, she'd say, tugging a braid tight, but I'll be damned if I don't give you 2 everything I got. Their dad was a ghost, gone when Jamal was 10. One day he was there, tall and charming with that lazy grin. The next, he wasn't. No note. No goodbye. Just vanished. Jamal didn't ask anymore. Back then, Jamal was the kind of kid who took things apart just to see how they worked. Radios, old watches, anything with a wire or spring inside. He liked patterns. Logic. Even numbers. But that changed in 5th grade. It started with a teacher, Mr. Klein. A man who thought tough love meant humiliation. One day, Jamal got a long division problem wrong on the board. Mr. Klein sighed loud enough for the whole class to hear and said, "Maybe math just isn't your thing, Carter." The way he said it, it wasn't just about math. It was about Jamal. About what someone like him could be. And just like that, something dimmed. Jamal stopped raising his hand. Stopped trying. He began to believe what people said about boys like him from places like his. That he'd be lucky to graduate, lucky to stay out of jail, lucky to survive. He still got decent grades, but math? Math became the enemy. The thing that made him feel small. One night, not long before high school started, Jamal sat at the kitchen table with Layla while she drew pictures of unicorns wearing space helmets. "Why you hate math so much?" she asked, not looking up. Jamal blinked. "I don't hate it." "Yeah, you do. You always sigh real loud when you open your homework. Like this." She did a dramatic impersonation, and Jamal laughed despite himself. "Okay, maybe I do hate it," he admitted. "But you're smart." He looked at her. Her big eyes were wide and honest, like only a little kid's could be. "Who told you that?" "Mom. And me. And God. That's like 3 people." Jamal smiled, then ruffled her hair. "You're weird." She shrugged. "You're my brother." At school, Jamal tried to keep his head down. Stay out of trouble. But that wasn't always easy. Some teachers saw him. Really saw him. Others? Not so much. One day in freshman year, a substitute asked him if he was in the right class when he walked into honors English. Jamal showed her his schedule without saying a word. It wasn't the first time. Probably wouldn't be the last. He learned to keep his face calm, even when his insides boiled. And then there was Marcus. Marcus Washington had been Jamal's best friend since second grade. They rode bikes together, played video games, even got suspended once for prank calling the principal. But lately, things had shifted. Marcus didn't understand why Jamal took honors classes. Or why he stopped skipping school sometimes. "You trying to be better than me or something?" he'd ask, half joking but not really. Jamal didn't know how to answer. He didn't want to be better. He just wanted more. Ms. Thornton was different from most teachers Jamal had ever met. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, and wore hoop earrings and Chuck Taylors like a student. But when she looked at you, it felt like she could see straight through all your fronting and fear. She'd only been at the school a few months, but Jamal had noticed something: the smart kids didn't scare her. And the struggling ones didn't annoy her. And when he blanked on that equation, when the whole class laughed, she didn't laugh with them. She waited. She watched. And then she gave him something most people didn't: a second chance. That weekend, Jamal sat on the fire escape outside his bedroom window, legs dangling, notebook on his lap. He stared at the same equation again. 3x, 4 equals 2x plus 7. He whispered the steps under his breath. Subtract 2x from both sides. That gives x, 4 is equal to 7. Add 4 to both sides. X equals 11. He blinked. Wait. Was that right? He grabbed his phone and checked a calculator app. X equals 11. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. A breeze rolled through, warm and thick with summer. Down below, a dog barked. A couple argued on a porch across the street. The world kept moving. But in that moment, Jamal felt still. Felt possible. Maybe he wasn't broken. Maybe the system was. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't going to let it win. The hardest part of falling isn't the fall itself. It's the landing. Jamal Carter had fallen so many times, emotionally and academically, that he stopped bracing for the crash. He just let it happen. Let it hurt. Let it dig into him quietly so no one would see. Because around here, around his block, his school, his life, if you showed weakness, they ate you alive. It wasn't always this way. There was a time Jamal believed he could be anything. In first grade, he told his teacher, Ms. Jenkins, he wanted to be an engineer. "I want to build stuff like bridges and spaceships." She beamed. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." That belief stayed with him, for a while. But belief is a fragile thing. All it takes is one moment, one person, one sentence, to break it. Fifth grade was the first real crack. Mr. Klein, cold-eyed and short-tempered, thought discipline meant humiliation. When Jamal couldn't keep up with the long division lesson, Klein sighed and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe your talents lie outside the classroom." Some kids laughed. Some stayed silent. But Jamal? He stopped raising his hand. Stopped volunteering to solve anything on the board. He sat still and small in his seat, heart racing any time his name came close to being called. And when it wasn't math, it was other things. Like the time a teacher complimented another student's essay and asked Jamal to read his out loud. When he did, she frowned halfway through and said, "Okay, that's enough." Or when a guidance counselor casually suggested he consider a trade school track even though Jamal had straight B's and 2 A's. They weren't malicious. Not always. But they chipped away at him. Slowly. Quietly. Until the confident little boy who wanted to build spaceships forgot how to build himself back up. By the time Jamal hit high school, he'd learned how to disappear. Not literally. He was still there, tall, with that ever-growing afro and quiet stare. But he learned how to slip into the background. To avoid notice. To not cause waves. He was the guy who kept his hoodie up even in class. The guy who scribbled lyrics in the margins of his notebook just to look busy. The guy who knew all the answers in history but never raised his hand. But inside? Inside, he was screaming to be seen. He'd see the other kids, those who raised their hands with confidence, who challenged teachers, who acted like they belonged, and wonder how they did it. Not because they were white, or rich, though some were, but because they'd been told their whole lives they could. Jamal had mostly been told to survive. He remembered a science fair in 7th grade. He built a working model of a hydraulic arm using cardboard, syringes, and tubing from Dollar Tree. It actually worked. Lifted small objects. Moved with water pressure. The judges gave him a participation ribbon. The winner? A kid whose dad helped him build a solar panel setup that Jamal knew he didn't understand. But Jamal didn't say anything. He just smiled. Took the ribbon. And told himself, it's fine. I wasn't supposed to win anyway. That sentence, I wasn't supposed to, became a loop in his brain. I wasn't supposed to be top of the class. I wasn't supposed to ace the test. I wasn't supposed to be better than this. So, when people laughed at him in algebra class, it wasn't just about that equation. It was about everything. Every time he tried to believe in himself, something came to shut it down. That laughter wasn't new. It was just louder this time. That night, Jamal stared at his ceiling in the dark. The small fan buzzed in the corner, Layla snored softly in the next room, and a car alarm went off down the street for the 4th time that week. But his mind wouldn't stop. 3x, 4 equals 2x plus 7. He saw it like a ghost every time he blinked. The laughter. The heat in his face. The ache in his chest. The absolute certainty that everyone had been right about him. But somewhere inside the weight of that moment, a small voice pushed back. Not a loud one. Not even clear. Just a whisper. You knew how to do it. You just froze. And it was true. He did know the first step. He just didn't trust himself enough to try. The next day, in the hallway before class, Jamal caught Ms. Thornton near her classroom. He didn't even know why he said it, but the words tumbled out before he could stop them. I knew the answer yesterday. She turned to him, eyebrow raised. Yeah. I freaked. I hate when everyone's watching. Like, they're just waiting for me to mess up. She nodded slowly. They probably are. That wasn't the answer Jamal expected. But, she added, their expectations have nothing to do with your ability. What matters is whether you expect yourself to succeed. He blinked. That's not easy. Neither is life. But you're already here. You might as well do something with it. Then she smiled. Wanna come by after school? Let's work on some equations. Just you and me. No audience. Jamal didn't answer right away. But deep down, something shifted. A thread of belief. Small. Fragile. But real. Yeah, he said. Okay. That evening, he walked into Ms. Thornton's classroom after the final bell. It was quiet. Peaceful. She handed him a marker. You'll mess up, she said. It'll suck. But you'll learn. Jamal stepped up to the board. Hand trembling. Heart pounding. And he wrote. 3x, 4 equals 2x plus 7. The same ghost. This time, he stared it down. There was something different about Miss Thornton. She wasn't just another teacher. She moved through the school like she didn't owe anyone an explanation, like she knew what it meant to grow up fighting for space in a system that wasn't built for you. She taught algebra too like it was poetry. Not in the roses are red way, but in the this actually matters to your survival kind of way. Math, she said once, pacing the front of the classroom in her red Converse, isn't about being a genius. It's about problem solving. Life throws problems at you every day, math just teaches you not to panic. That line stuck with Jamal. And after the humiliation in front of the class, after the laughter burned into his skin like heat rash, Miss Thornton did something no one else had ever done. She didn't ignore him. She didn't move on. She saw him. Their first after-school session started slow. He didn't talk much. Just nodded. She didn't push. Let's start from here, she said, writing on the board. 2x plus 4 equals 3x, 1. Jamal stared at it. Not because it was hard, but because it reminded him of all the times he'd almost gotten a problem like that right, but didn't. Distribute first, she said gently, watching his body language, not just his answers. He began writing. 2x plus 8 equals 3x, 1. Good. Then subtract 2x, Jamal mumbled. He was surprised at how quickly it came back. Exactly. Before long, the board was filled with his handwriting, X's and numbers, solving steps, small victories that felt, weirdly good. The second session, Miss Thornton brought snacks. You can't solve for X on an empty stomach, she joked, tossing him a granola bar. The third session, she played a lo-fi hip-hop playlist in the background, like the ones Jamal listened to at night when he couldn't sleep. By the fourth, Jamal had stopped feeling like a student staying after 4 extra help, and more like a player in training. This wasn't punishment. It was practice. During one session, Jamal leaned back in his chair and said, "You really think I can get good at this?" Miss Thornton turned to face him directly. "I don't think you can. I know you will. But it's not just about getting better at math, Jamal." He furrowed his brow. "Then what's it about?" She tapped the board. "It's about showing yourself you're capable of growth. That you're allowed to mess up and still move forward. That you don't have to be perfect, you just have to keep showing up." He didn't have words for that. No one had ever framed success like that before. It wasn't about winning. It was about believing. One afternoon, when Jamal arrived for their session, she was already at the board. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" "There's a math competition next month. Open to all high school students in the county. Top scorers get a scholarship toward college courses next summer." Jamal raised an eyebrow. And I think you should enter." He laughed. "Hard. Me? In a math competition? Miss Thornton, I was public enemy number 1 to the X and Y axis like 2 weeks ago." She smiled. "You've got something a lot of those other kids don't have." "What, low expectations?" "No," she said seriously. "You've got hunger. You know what it's like to fight through fear. That's a skill, Jamal. They don't teach that in textbooks." He fell quiet. The idea felt absurd. But also, electric. What if? What if he actually tried? What if, for once, he didn't play small? On the walk home that day, Jamal moved slower than usual. Not because he was tired, but because his thoughts were sprinting ahead of him. He passed the same cracked sidewalks, the same corner store with the broken freezer, the same 2 dudes playing chess on milk crates. But everything looked different. He thought about the competition. About standing in front of a whiteboard again, not frozen, not mocked, but ready. Then he shook his head. Too much. Too soon. And yet, he couldn't stop imagining it. That night, Jamal sat with Layla while she drew pictures on the living room floor. "What you working on?" he asked. "It's a spaceship. This one's for you." He leaned over. It was crooked, uneven, a little wild-looking, but beautiful. It had, Jamal 1 written in big bubble letters on the side. "You're gonna fly, right?" she asked. He looked at her. At the hope in her voice. And something clicked. "Yeah," he whispered. "Yeah, I think I will." "All right," Miss Thornton said, spinning a dry erase marker in her hand like a baton. "Let's take it up a notch." Jamal blinked at the equation on the board. 4x, 3, plus 2 equals 2, x plus 5, plus 6. His stomach twisted just a little. He'd done plenty of problems the past few weeks, but this one looked like it had teeth. "I'm not sure about this one," he admitted. "That's the point," she smiled. "Growth doesn't come from easy problems." He stared at it. Took a breath. "Okay. Distribute first." "Go on." For x, 12 plus 2 is equal to 2x plus 10 plus 6. "Nice. What now?" He hesitated. "Combine like terms, so." He wrote. For x, 10 equals 2x plus 16. "Good. Then subtract 2x from both sides." He moved confidently. For a moment, he felt unstoppable. Until the final step. He misread his subtraction. Got the wrong answer. And he knew it. He saw it right after he said it, but Miss Thornton didn't correct him. She just asked, "Does that answer make sense?" Jamal stared at the board. The correct answer was obvious now. He felt heat rise in his chest. "I messed it up." She nodded. "Yup." "Great," he muttered, tossing the marker on the tray and collapsing into his chair. But Miss Thornton didn't flinch. "Jamal, you didn't mess it up. You just didn't finish correcting it. That's different. Feels the same." "It's not." She leaned against the desk. "You think those mathletes on TV get every question right on the first try?" He didn't answer. "They don't. I've coached some of the best in the state. You know what separates them from the rest?" "What?" "They're not afraid to fail out loud." Jamal didn't say anything. He looked at the board again. Looked at the place where his mistake sat, so simple, so obvious. He wanted to rip the whole thing off the wall. But instead, he stood up. Picked the marker back up. Crossed out his mistake. And fixed it. After their session, Jamal walked home slowly, feeling the weight of failure pressing down like extra books in his backpack. But there was something different about this failure. It didn't crush him. It just stung. That night, he spread his papers on the kitchen table and practiced anyway. His phone buzzed with messages from Marcus and a group chat full of memes, but he didn't check them. Not tonight. He was busy messing up. On purpose. By the weekend, Jamal had practiced nearly every day. Some nights he got stuck on problems that felt like puzzles with missing pieces. Other nights, the answers flowed so fast it surprised even him. But there was always that one moment when he slipped. When he got too confident, or too distracted, and messed up a step. And every time it happened, the old voice returned. "See? You're not cut out for this." He could hear it in Mr. Klein's voice. In his old classmates. In the silence after people gave up on him too soon. But now, he was learning to say something back. "Watch me." One afternoon, Miss Thornton handed him a practice quiz. 5 questions, she said. Timed. Like the real deal. No second tries. Let's see where you're at. Jamal cracked his knuckles. Bet. She set the timer. The first 2 questions. Easy. The third one. Tricky, but he remembered a similar one from their last session. The fourth? His pen slipped. He panicked. Spent too much time erasing and rewriting. By the fifth, time was almost out. He guessed. He knew it was a guess. The buzzer beeped. He handed her the paper, already bracing himself. She looked it over. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Then she handed it back. 3 out of 5. Okay, he said, trying to sound chill. But inside, he was boiling. 3. That's it? Miss Thornton didn't flinch. Better than 2. Better than 1. Better than 0. It's also not 5. And you know why, she said, calmly. You rushed the 4th. You panicked on the 5th. And now, you know exactly what to fix. Jamal rubbed his temples. I feel like I'm not improving fast enough. Fast enough for what? For people to stop looking at me like I'm a joke. For this to feel real. Miss Thornton stepped closer. You're learning to play an instrument. Right now, you're just hitting keys. Pretty soon, it's gonna sound like music. Jamal didn't respond. But her words stuck with him. That weekend, Marcus hit him up again. Yo, you ghostin' or what? Jamal stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't want to hang with Marcus. But every time they talked lately, it felt like they were speaking different languages. Marcus didn't get why Jamal cared about school now. Or why he was spending time with that try-hard math teacher. And Jamal didn't know how to explain it. So he didn't reply. Not yet. That Sunday, something unexpected happened. Jamal was sitting at the kitchen table, solving problems, when his mom walked in after a long shift at the hospital. She looked tired. Bone tired. But when she saw him working, books open, pencil flying, she stopped. You still doing math? Yeah, he said, quietly. She walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You know, your grandma always said you had the mind of an architect, she said. You used to build towers out of oatmeal boxes. Jamal chuckled. They always fell over. Still taller than anything I built, she smiled. Then, more seriously, she added, I'm proud of you, baby. I don't say it enough, but I am. Jamal didn't know what to say. No one had ever told him they were proud of him for trying. For failing. For fighting through it. And for the first time, he started to believe, maybe he could really do this. There was a tension in the air that Jamal couldn't name. It hung between texts left on read, between long silences and short replies. It crept into every sentence Marcus sent him that week. You still doing nerd math with that teacher? Bro, what even is this scholarship stuff you talking about? We still good? Jamal didn't answer right away. He didn't know how. It wasn't that he didn't want to be good with Marcus. They'd been tight since they were 6, when Marcus shared his Doritos on the first day of first grade and told Jamal, you look like you need a win. But now, things were different. Jamal was changing, and Marcus felt it. That Friday, Marcus waited for him after last period, leaning against the lockers with that trademark half grin. Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. We hitting up Malik's tonight? Got some music, maybe a little something to sip on. Just like old times. Jamal hesitated. I got a practice test this weekend. Miss Thornton said. Marcus rolled his eyes. Man, you really hanging out with a teacher after hours? It's not like that. Nah, Marcus laughed, but it didn't sound like he thought it was funny. You acting like some scholarship's gonna save you from being from here. You really think they gonna hand you a future, 'cause you solved for X? Jamal clenched his jaw. Maybe not, he said slowly, but I'm tired of solving for nothing. That hit different. The grin slipped off Marcus's face. So now you too good for the crew? It's not like that, Jamal repeated, quieter this time. But the words hung in the air like smoke. Thick. Heavy. And Jamal realized something he'd been avoiding for weeks. He was outgrowing people who weren't ready to grow. That night, Jamal couldn't focus. The numbers blurred on the page. His pencil tapped restlessly. His mind kept going back to Marcus, his eyes, that anger hiding underneath the jokes. He thought about all the times they'd played video games until 2 a.m., talked about the dumbest stuff, or snuck out to shoot hoops under streetlights. Marcus was more than a friend. He was home. And now home felt different. Jamal didn't know what to do with that. The next day, Miss Thornton noticed something was off. "Talk to me," she said, setting her coffee down as Jamal rubbed his temple. "You're not here today." Jamal sighed. "It's nothing. Just friend stuff." "Marcus?" He looked up, surprised. "How'd you?" "I teach, Jamal. I know when someone's walking around with a cracked heart." He gave a sad chuckle. "It's like I'm finally trying. I'm finally getting somewhere. And now it's like the people I care about are pulling away. Like they don't recognize me anymore." Miss Thornton nodded, then sat beside him, not across from him. "Change is lonely," she said. "Not because you're doing something wrong, but because not everyone's ready to move forward with you." Jamal stayed quiet. She added, "It doesn't mean you leave them behind. But you don't shrink yourself just to make others comfortable." That landed hard. He thought of Layla, drawing rockets with his name on them. Of his mom coming home exhausted but proud. Of Miss Thornton, choosing to believe in him before he believed in himself. And then he thought of Marcus, stuck at a red light while Jamal was finally learning to drive. That night, Jamal did something he'd never done before. He picked up his phone. And called. Not text. Not DM. A call. Marcus picked up on the third ring. "Yo. We good?" Jamal asked. A long pause. Then, "I don't know, man. You feel different." "I am," Jamal said honestly. "But I still got love for you. I'm just trying to be something more." Another pause. "You ain't gotta explain," Marcus said, but his voice was tight. "Just don't forget where you came from." Jamal swallowed hard. Never that. The next week, he dove into prep harder than ever. Something inside had shifted again, not just determination, but ownership. This wasn't about proving people wrong anymore. It was about proving himself right. Every mistake on a practice quiz was a step forward. Every confusing equation was a hill he was now willing to climb. He started staying after school longer, asking more questions, even helping classmates when they were stuck. And little by little, Miss Thornton stopped standing beside him at the board. Because Jamal didn't need her to anymore. One afternoon, after he nailed a particularly brutal set of equations, she tossed him a protein bar and said, "You know, I'm not surprised." "By what?" "By you. By how good you've gotten. How far you've come." He looked down, half smiling. "Feels like I'm still just messing up, half the time." "Jamal," she said, "growth is messy. You're not supposed to glide through it. You're supposed to fight through it." He nodded. And for the first time, he believed it. But life wasn't done testing him. Because the next morning, an announcement came over the school intercom. "All math team competitors, please report to room 214 for final sign-ups and placement exams." Jamal froze. This was it. No turning back now. The classroom felt colder than usual. Not because of the AC, but because of the pressure. Room 214 was packed with students from every corner of the school, some Jamal had never seen before, others he recognized as the ones who always sat in the front row, raising their hands before the teacher even finished asking a question. These were the math kids. And Jamal? He still wasn't sure if he belonged here. Ms. Thornton caught his eye from across the room and gave a small nod. He tried to breathe. In. Out. Calm. But his palms were sweating. They handed out the placement test in silence. A stack of pages. 10 problems. 10 brutal, beautiful, terrifying problems. Jamal stared at the first one. Problem 1, a train leaves Chicago at 9:15 a.m. traveling at a speed of 65 miles per hour. His eyes glazed. He blinked hard. Read it again. Then again. His brain, blank. 2 rows over, a kid with thick glasses was already scribbling down answers like he was writing a grocery list. Jamal flipped to question 2. Worse. Question 3. Even worse. Panic crawled up his throat. What if I'm not ready? What if I never was? His pencil hovered, shaking. Every formula he'd studied felt like it had been erased from his memory. 30 minutes passed. He had answered 3. Poorly. His heart sank with every tick of the clock. The more he panicked, the less he could think. The more he tried to force the answers, the fuzzier they became. It was like trying to swim while sinking. He looked up. Others were flipping pages, frowning in thought, but moving. Making progress. Belonging. He felt like an imposter in a room full of geniuses. By the end of the hour, he had attempted 5 questions. 3 of which he knew were wrong. The rest? Blank. Not because he gave up. But because he froze. When the timer rang, he couldn't even look at Ms. Thornton as he handed in the paper. He just dropped it off and walked straight out. The hallway spun. He pushed through the side door of the building and collapsed onto the steps, head in his hands. All that work. All that practice. For this? He sat there for 10 minutes before he heard footsteps behind him. You looked like you saw a ghost back there, Miss Thornton said, sitting beside him, her coffee in hand. Jamal didn't respond. She waited. Finally, he muttered, I choked. Okay. I only finished half. All right. It was bad. Like, really bad. She sipped her coffee. And? He looked at her, frustrated. Aren't you supposed to tell me I did great anyway? She smiled. Why would I lie to you? Because I failed, he said, his voice cracking. There it was. The truth. The thing he had buried so deep. He was afraid to fail. Because failure felt like a return ticket to the old Jamal, the invisible one, the one who couldn't. Ms. Thornton leaned forward, elbows on knees. You ever watch boxing? Not really. You know how a fighter learns to win. How? They get punched. Hard. Usually more than once. Jamal raised an eyebrow. The best ones? They take hits, get knocked down, bloody nose, split lip, and then they get back in the ring. Not because they like the pain, but because they learn from it. That's how you build resilience. He looked down. I thought I was past this. I thought I was finally doing something right. You are, she said firmly. You're doing the hardest thing of all, you're changing. And change doesn't happen in a straight line. He let her words settle. They didn't fix everything. But they didn't have to. They just had to keep him from giving up. That night, Jamal sat on his bed, the placement test still haunting his mind. Layla knocked gently. You okay? She asked, her stuffed bunny clutched tight. Yeah, he lied. She came in anyway, climbed up beside him. I drew you another spaceship, she said, pulling out a paper. This one's even bigger. It has boosters now. He looked at it. It said. Captain Jamal. Future, activated. He laughed softly. Thanks, kiddo. You're still gonna go to space, right? Yeah, he whispered. I am. And he meant it. Even if the rocket crashed once or twice. And Monday, Miss Thornton called him to her desk before class. I got the results from the test, she said, sliding a paper face down toward him. He hesitated. Then flipped it. He hadn't made the top team. But he had placed on the team. Barely. But enough. Enough to compete. Enough to try again. Enough to keep going. And that? That was everything. Jamal had never thought of himself as a fighter. He wasn't the loud one. Wasn't the one starting drama in the halls. He stayed low, kept his head down, blended in. But that Monday, when he found out he made the math team, barely, something in him snapped into place. Enough was no longer enough. He didn't want to scrape by anymore. He wanted to win. The first official team practice was after school, in room 206. Jamal walked in and immediately felt the difference. Everyone was already seated, binders open, calculators ready, eyes sharp. These weren't just smart kids. They were hungry. Focused. Unapologetically intense. No jokes. No distractions. Just math. Coach Donnelly, a thin, sharp-faced man with a voice like a violin string, walked in and clapped once. Welcome to the trenches, he said. This isn't a club. This is war with numbers. No one laughed. He pointed to the whiteboard. Today's drill, speed solving. You get 30 seconds per problem. Get it right, you move on. Get it wrong, you're out. Jamal's gut dropped. But he stepped forward anyway. The first round was brutal. Jamal barely made it through question 3 before he got tripped up. His decimals were off by 1 place. Coach Donnelly called him out. If this were regionals, you'd be out in the second minute. It stung. But he didn't walk out. He stayed. Watched. Took notes. When the others left, Jamal approached Coach Donnelly. I want to stay late. I want more reps. The coach raised an eyebrow. You sure? You've got a long way to go. Jamal looked him dead in the eye. Then I better start now. Over the next few weeks, Jamal changed. Not just in the way he talked, but in how he moved. He started waking up an hour earlier to review formulas before school. He skipped lunch to meet with Ms. Thornton and go over mistakes. He went home, helped Layla with her homework, then locked in with practice problems until midnight. No TikTok. No video games. No noise. Just purpose. It wasn't easy. His grades in other classes started to dip. Teachers gave him side eyes when he handed in late assignments. Even his mom noticed the bags under his eyes. You pushing yourself too hard, she asked one night, pouring him tea. Jamal stirred the cup slowly. I don't want to just survive anymore, Ma. I want to build something. She kissed his forehead. Then build, baby. But take care of the builder too. At school, Marcus barely spoke to him. They passed each other in the hallway, two strangers in familiar skin. Jamal wanted to fix it. But every time he thought about slowing down to make space for their friendship, he remembered something Miss Thornton once said. You don't owe anyone your potential. And he kept walking. One Thursday, Coach Donnelly handed out a diagnostic worksheet meant to simulate the state-level questions. 12 problems. High pressure. Real-time scoring. Jamal sat down and took a breath. This time, he didn't panic. Didn't freeze. His pencil moved with clarity. He could see the logic now, like a map he was finally learning to read. When time was called, he leaned back, breathing hard. Coach Donnelly reviewed the answers, one by one. Problem 1, correct. Problem 2, correct. Problem 3, correct. Problem 4. 5. 6. Jamal clenched his fists. By the end? 10 out of 12. The third highest score on the team. No one laughed. No one called him lucky. This time, they nodded. Like he belonged. After practice, Jamal stayed behind. Miss Thornton was waiting outside, leaning against the doorframe. Heard you cooked, she smiled. Just a light simmer, he grinned back, finally relaxing. She tilted her head. Feels different now, doesn't it? Jamal nodded. I used to think math was just numbers. Boring, stiff. But now. It's like, it's mine. Like I've got control over something for once. She lit up. That's the magic. Then she added, you're not just learning to solve problems on paper, Jamal. You're learning to solve your life. That night, Jamal walked home slowly. Not out of exhaustion, but reflection. He passed the basketball court where he and Marcus used to play. It was empty now. He stopped. For a moment, he almost turned in. Almost called. Almost texted. But he didn't. Not yet. When he got home, Layla was asleep on the couch, her sketchbook open. On the page? A spaceship, again. But this time, it was flying past stars shaped like equations. And at the top, she'd written. Go get it, Captain J. He smiled. Then he sat at the kitchen table, cracked open his binder, and dove back in. Because now, he wasn't just studying for a test. He was studying for his life. It was a cold Friday morning when Miss Thornton made the announcement. I've got a surprise for y'all today, she said, walking into their after-school prep session with a mysterious grin. Guest speaker. The room buzzed. Who? Someone asked. You'll see. 10 minutes later, in walked a tall man in a navy hoodie and worn jeans. He was black, maybe in his late 20s, with kind eyes and a presence that instantly commanded attention. Some of the students recognized him right away. Jamal didn't. Until Ms. Thornton smiled and said, everyone, this is Elijah Dorsey. Former state math champion. Full ride to Stanford. Graduated with honors. Now works at SpaceX. The room froze. Jamal blinked. Hard. SpaceX. Stanford. Math champion. And he looked like them. Elijah laughed as he saw the shock. Yup. I know. I don't look like a math nerd. But that's the point, right? He leaned against the whiteboard. Let me tell y'all something, he began. When I was in high school, I had a 2.1 GPA and more detentions than test scores. Students chuckled. I was the kid who sat in the back, hoodie up, praying the teacher wouldn't call my name. I didn't care about math. I didn't care about anything. Jamal leaned forward, heart pounding. Elijah continued, then one day, my geometry teacher pulled me aside. Told me, you got patterns in your brain that most people can't see. But you're wasting it trying to survive instead of trying to thrive. He paused. That hit me hard. And from that moment on, I decided, I'm not just gonna be good at math. I'm gonna be undeniable. For the next half hour, Elijah told stories. About staying late in the library because his house was too loud. About losing friends who didn't understand his shift in priorities. About the first time he beat a prep school kid in a competition and the boy's dad said, must have been a fluke. About proving it wasn't. Again. And again. And again. Jamal felt something bloom inside him that he hadn't felt since this journey started. Fire. Not just motivation. But purpose. When the session ended, most kids headed out, buzzing about the talk. Jamal stayed behind. Elijah was packing up when he noticed him. "What's up, man?" Jamal hesitated, then asked, "Did you ever think about quitting? Like, for real?" Elijah smiled. "Every other day." Jamal exhaled. Elijah added, "But then I remembered who's watching." "Who?" Jamal asked. Elijah looked him straight in the eye. "Everyone who looks like us and doesn't believe they can." Jamal didn't speak. He didn't need to. Elijah clapped him on the shoulder. "You're gonna make them believe. Just don't stop showing up." That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. His mind raced, not with fear this time, but with vision. He sat at his desk and pulled out his notebook. On the cover, he scratched out the old label, "Math Practice." And wrote a new one. "Proof of what's possible." The next Monday, something changed at school. Jamal started noticing other kids watching him, not mocking him, but curious. "Yo, you the one who made the math team, right?" one sophomore asked in the cafeteria. Another kid in algebra whispered, "Miss Thornton said you crushed the diagnostics." Even a junior football player walked past and gave him a nod. "Keep killing it, bro." Jamal didn't puff up. He didn't brag. But inside, he was glowing. Because now, people didn't just see Jamal. They saw the possibility in themselves. He started offering help in class. Quietly. Not to show off, but to share. He tutored a freshman who reminded him of himself, hoodie up, head down, already halfway checked out of school. He printed out extra practice problems for Layla, who now wanted to do space math like Jamal. He even started a small study group after school, just a few kids at first, but it was growing. Not just about math, but about believing. One day, Marcus showed up at the door of the study group. Jamal froze for a second. "Yo," Marcus said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Saw the stuff on IG. People talkin'. You got the city buzzin', dot." Jamal shrugged. "Just working." Marcus looked down. "You still mad at me?" Jamal shook his head. "Nah. Just, been busy." Marcus glanced at the whiteboard. "You teaching this now?" "I guess." Marcus nodded slowly. Then asked, "You think I could, sit in? Just to see?" Jamal didn't answer right away. Then stepped aside. "Yeah. Come through." That night, Jamal wrote something in his notebook. A simple sentence. But it meant everything. "I'm not just learning for me anymore." The day of the mock battle arrived sooner than anyone expected. Jamal could feel the tension hanging in the air as he walked into room 206 that morning. The walls were lined with posters for the regional competition, and there were fresh markers on the whiteboard. Everyone was already there, each member of the team with their game face on, their heads slightly bowed in concentration, their eyes scanning the room, mentally preparing. Coach Donnelly entered, his expression serious. "All right, everyone. Today is the day you show not just me, not just your classmates, but yourself what you're made of." The room fell silent. "You're not just doing this for your grades. You're doing this for the whole community. We've got a reputation to uphold. We're not here to be average. We're here to win." Jamal glanced at his teammates, Avery, the quiet one who solved equations faster than anyone, but always kept to himself, Maya, the creative one, who found patterns in numbers like they were pieces of art, and Eli, the powerhouse who would race through every problem as if he were running a marathon. Together, they were the underdogs, but they'd worked hard to get here. And for Jamal, today was more than just a competition. It was the test of everything he'd learned. It was the test of who he had become. The competition began. Jamal's heart beat fast in his chest as the clock started ticking. His mind buzzed with focus as each problem flashed across the screen. There was no time to hesitate. No time to second guess. He solved problem 1 quickly, moving to problem 2. He could hear the sound of pens scratching paper, the rustling of pages, and the frantic tapping of fingers on calculators. But then came problem 3. It was a word problem, one of those that usually tripped him up. He stared at it, his mind suddenly blank. He knew he had been trained for moments like this. He had prepared. But for some reason, his confidence wavered. This was the moment where he usually froze. He glanced over at Maya, who was already on problem 4, her pencil moving like a brush painting across the canvas. He watched as Avery adjusted his glasses, solving equations with calm precision. Eli was a blur of motion, working through the problems at lightning speed. But Jamal? He was stuck. The seconds ticked away. He could feel his pulse in his throat. His mind raced. Focus, he whispered to himself. He took a deep breath. He had made it this far. He wasn't going to let one problem take him down. He reached for the board. The symbols, the numbers, they all started to line up in his mind. Focus. Solve. With 30 seconds to spare, Jamal punched in the answer and moved on to the next problem. The timer buzzed, signaling the end of the round. The team was silent as Coach Donnelly called out the results. He looked at the screen, then back at them. You did well. But you could have done better. We're not just here to pass the test. We're here to break the record. The rest of the competition felt like a blur. Jamal moved through the questions with precision, his mind honed on the strategy he'd developed over the last few months. No distractions. No doubts. When the last problem flashed across the screen, Jamal felt a sense of accomplishment, even though the clock wasn't finished yet. He had done it. His team had done it. They gathered their materials, and Coach Donnelly nodded in approval. Well done. But there's still work to do. Don't think this is the end. It's just the beginning. As they left the competition hall, Jamal couldn't help but feel the weight of what had just happened. He had proven to himself that he could handle the pressure. That he wasn't the same kid who used to avoid math. He was a contender. Later that night, he sat on the front steps of his house, staring up at the stars. Layla came out, sitting beside him, her eyes wide with excitement. Did you win? She asked, her voice filled with hope. Jamal smiled at her, ruffling her hair. We didn't win, but we came close. And that's a win for me. She grinned, hugging him tightly. You did it. I knew you could. Jamal looked at his sister and nodded. Yeah. We're not done yet. But it feels good. Feels like we're on the right track. The next day at school, the buzz around the mock battle was everywhere. Whispers in the halls. Students talking in the cafeteria. Jamal didn't even realize how much things had changed until he walked into the math classroom the following morning. People actually acknowledged him, not with mockery, but with respect. One kid, a senior he barely knew, gave him a thumbs up. Yo, Jamal. You really held it down yesterday. That was tight. Jamal nodded, smiling to himself. He hadn't done it for the applause, but it sure felt nice to be noticed for once. Back in room 206, Coach Donnelly handed out the results. We came so close to winning. You all were outstanding, he said. But this isn't over. We've got a few weeks before the regional competition. And that's where we make our mark. Jamal felt the fire ignite again inside him. They weren't done yet. They were just getting started. The weeks after the mock battle passed in a whirlwind. Jamal had barely time to breathe between schoolwork, tutoring, and his commitment to the math team. He could feel the pressure mounting as the regional competition loomed closer. He and his teammates worked harder than ever, revisiting old concepts, cracking practice problems late into the night, and pushing themselves further than they ever thought possible. But with every step forward, the stakes seemed higher, and the tension, more palpable. It was the Monday before the regional competition when things took a turn. Jamal was sitting in room 206, absorbed in a set of differential equations, when Miss Thornton walked in, looking unusually serious. "Team," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "we've just received some news." Everyone stopped what they were doing, their heads snapping toward her. "There's been a scheduling issue with the regional competition," she continued, her brow furrowed. "The competition isn't just going to be the usual format. They've added a wild card round, an unannounced surprise round, just before the final test. And, it's an open challenge." Jamal's stomach dropped. "What does that mean for us?" Avery asked, his usual calm demeanor replaced with visible concern. "It means you'll face a completely unexpected problem. It could be anything, an algorithm, a math game, something abstract you've never seen before. The challenge is designed to test your ability to think on your feet," Ms. Thornton explained. Jamal could feel a knot form in his chest. They had prepared for everything they knew. They'd practiced every possible type of problem. But this? This was different. The next few days were a blur of frustration and anxiety. Jamal couldn't sleep. He was constantly rehearsing different scenarios in his mind, trying to imagine what the surprise round could be. How could they prepare for something they didn't even know was coming? He could sense the tension growing in the team. Maya was quieter than usual, Avery seemed lost in his thoughts, and Eli couldn't stop pacing. They'd worked so hard, this wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't prepared for the unknown. On the day of the competition, the team arrived early, dressed in their matching shirts and looking more like a sports team than a math squad. Jamal tried to keep his head up, but the uncertainty of what awaited them weighed on him. Coach Donnelly gave them a quick pep talk, but it felt different today. There was an edge in his voice that Jamal couldn't quite place. "Whatever happens today, remember that you've already proven something to yourselves. This isn't about winning, it's about showing up, no matter what." As they entered the large auditorium for the competition, Jamal's nerves reached a boiling point. He glanced around at the other teams, some of whom looked like seasoned veterans, the top students from prestigious schools. Jamal couldn't help but feel a little out of place. The competition started as usual with a round of structured problems. Jamal felt his confidence rise as he breezed through the equations, working alongside his team. The atmosphere was intense, but they had trained for this. They knew this part. Then came the wild card round. The lights dimmed. A large screen flickered to life in front of them. "Team 7, you are up first," the announcer called. Jamal's heart raced. He and his team stood up, trying to hold on to their composure as they walked toward the stage. There, on the screen, was a riddle, a complex word problem that involved a puzzle so abstract, none of them had ever seen anything like it. Where to even start? Maya whispered, her voice tight with panic. Jamal tried to focus. He could feel the clock ticking, every second slipping away as they stared at the problem. A minute passed. Then 2. Jamal could hear the murmurs of the crowd, growing louder with every passing second. This is it, Jamal thought. This is the test. This is where we prove we can handle the unknown. He looked at Avery, who was already scribbling equations down but clearly struggling to connect the dots. Eli stared at the screen with furrowed brows, his pen frozen in midair. Maya was pacing back and forth, muttering to herself, trying to find a pattern in the chaos. And Jamal? Jamal closed his eyes for a moment. Think. Breathe. He opened his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he began to write. He didn't know how it happened, but his mind clicked into gear. He followed his instincts, focusing on the patterns he saw hidden within the riddle. Step by step, piece by piece, the solution started to unfold before him. Eli, Jamal said, his voice steady. Pass me the calculator. Maya, can you recheck the initial data? Avery, try to simplify the variables. I think we've got it. The team shifted into action, working together with a renewed sense of urgency and trust. Their movements became more synchronized. Jamal could feel the pressure, but there was something else now, a quiet confidence, as if they were no longer just reacting to the challenge, but were controlling it. The timer counted down. 10 seconds left. Jamal hit the final key on the calculator. The answer appeared on the screen. Done! Maya exclaimed. The lights flared back on. The announcer looked at the screen and nodded. Team 7 has completed the wildcard challenge successfully. Time, 8 minutes, 45 seconds. Well done. The crowd erupted in applause. Jamal let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He turned to his team, their faces wide with relief and pride. But then, something strange happened. The head judge, a tall woman with sharp features, stepped forward and raised her hand for silence. We have an announcement, she said. While Team 7 has completed the wildcard challenge, we've noticed an irregularity in the solution. After a thorough review, we regret to inform you that. Jamal's heart dropped. You've made an error in your calculations. The solution provided is incorrect. The room fell silent. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The room felt like it was closing in on Jamal. His hands were cold, his mind a fog of disbelief. The words echoed in his ears, but they didn't make sense. He could barely comprehend the judgment of the head judge. You've made an error in your calculations. The solution provided is incorrect. Jamal stood frozen, staring at the screen as if the words would change if he looked long enough. The applause that had just erupted seemed to drown out, the cheers of the crowd now distant, muffled by the overwhelming rush of shame and disbelief flooding his chest. Beside him, Avery was shaking his head, his mouth moving but no sound coming out. Maya looked like she might burst into tears, her face pale and her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. Eli, usually the most confident, was staring at the floor, his face hard with frustration. Jamal could feel his own heart racing, a dull ache forming in his chest as the reality of the situation sunk in. They had been so close, too close. They had worked so hard to get this far, and now, they had failed. The judges took their time reviewing the solution, while Jamal and his teammates stood, completely still, their eyes all glued to the screen. For a moment, everything seemed to blur, like Jamal was in some kind of fog. The noise of the room, the whispers, the murmurs of the other teams, all of it faded away. His hands trembled. The weight of the failure pressed down on him like a 100-pound brick. He wasn't used to this. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. After a few more tense moments, the head judge cleared her throat and turned to the audience. Unfortunately, due to the error in the calculations, Team 7's solution cannot be counted as valid. We will be deducting points. Jamal's stomach dropped. This was it. This was the end. The room erupted into murmurs, some of them sympathetic, some of them dismissive. The other teams looked at Jamal's team with pity, or worse, disbelief. It was clear to everyone that Team 7 had been so close to pulling off a victory, but now, that dream had crumbled to dust. Jamal's hands curled into fists. He wanted to scream. He wanted to lash out, to tell everyone that they were wrong, that they didn't understand how much they had worked for this moment. But instead, he swallowed the lump in his throat and turned to his teammates. Hey, it's not over, he said, but his voice felt thin, weak, even to his own ears. Avery looked at him, his eyes still wide with shock. What now, Jamal? We've failed. We've lost. Maya's lips trembled. How are we supposed to fix this? How do we even begin? Jamal didn't know what to say. His own mind was clouded with frustration. All that hard work, all the hours spent learning, practicing, and solving problems, it had all led to this moment. And now, all of it felt meaningless. But then he saw it. Across the room, his sister Layla was standing near the back of the auditorium, looking at him with wide eyes. Her presence was like a grounding force, reminding him of what mattered. Jamal turned to his team, his heart pounding. We can't let this define us. This doesn't end here. We've still got the rest of the competition. But the doubt in their eyes was impossible to ignore. They'd all given everything they had, and yet, they had come up short. How could they overcome something like this? How could they recover when they were so close to victory? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jamal's team finished the competition, but the fire that had once burned so brightly within them seemed to have faded. They sat together, staring at the remaining problems on the test, but none of them had the same passion they'd had in the beginning. Their confidence was shattered. Their morale broken. That night, Jamal lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling. The sounds of his family moving around the house felt distant, like they were happening in another world entirely. He thought about the competition, about everything they had gone through to get here. It all felt pointless now. What was the point? But then, just as he was about to drift into the numbness of sleep, Jamal heard a knock on his door. Jamal. It was his mom's voice. Can I come in? Yeah, Jamal muttered, rubbing his eyes. She opened the door slowly and stepped inside, sitting down on the edge of his bed. You okay? She asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. Jamal shook his head. We lost. We messed up. All that work, and it didn't even matter. I just don't know if I can keep going. His mom sighed, brushing a hand through his hair. Jamal, let me tell you something. You're not a failure. You've never been a failure. You've grown so much already. And sometimes, the best lessons come from things going wrong. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you've learned things about yourself and about your team that are more valuable than any award or trophy could ever give you. Jamal looked up at her, his eyes filled with unshed tears. But we were so close. We could have won. I know. But this isn't the end. It's just a setback. You don't give up just because one thing doesn't go right. You rise up. You learn from this. You come back stronger. And you know what? You'll be even better next time. Her words didn't make the pain go away, but they gave him something he hadn't had all day, hope. Jamal stood up, feeling a sense of resolve building within him. He didn't know what the next day would bring, or how his team would react. But he knew one thing for sure, he wasn't going to let this moment define him. They had come this far. They weren't going to give up now. As he walked downstairs, Jamal found Maya, Avery, and Eli sitting on the couch, staring at their phones. They looked up as he entered. Jamal cleared his throat, taking a step toward them. We're not done. We're going to keep going. We can't let this be the end. Maya raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean, Jamal said, his voice steady, we've got one last round. We're going to fight for it. We've made mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't make things right. We're going to finish this, no matter what. Eli looked at him, then at the others. After a long moment, he nodded. All right. I'm in. Avery, who had been silent for most of the day, finally spoke up. Yeah. Let's do it. The team stood together, a newfound resolve in their eyes. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The next morning, Jamal could feel the weight of the competition in his bones. The earlier event still loomed over him, the sting of failure still fresh. But now, as he looked at his team, he knew they had one last chance to prove to themselves what they were truly capable of. Today wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about doing their best, showing up, and standing tall, no matter what. The pressure of the wild card round loomed in the back of their minds, but they had already decided, they weren't going to let that mistake define them. It was time for the final round. The morning of the last event, the gymnasium was buzzing with the sound of excited chatter, students pacing back and forth, strategizing, and preparing for what lay ahead. Jamal and his team sat together in the back corner, as the clock ticked down to the beginning of the final round. "This is it," Maya whispered, tapping her pen nervously on the desk. "One last chance." Avery leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "We've got this. No more mistakes. We just need to focus." Jamal nodded, trying to push aside the lingering doubts. "We've come this far. We've got what it takes. Let's show them who we are." The announcer's voice broke through the chatter, signaling the start of the final round. Jamal felt a sudden rush of adrenaline, the kind of feeling that made his heart beat faster and his hands clammy. This was it. No more second chances. "Teams," the announcer said, "this is the final challenge. The problem you will be presented with will test everything you've learned so far: strategy, creativity, and teamwork. You have 30 minutes to solve it." Jamal exchanged a glance with his teammates. Maya took a deep breath. Avery nodded, and Eli cracked his knuckles, looking determined. For a moment, it felt like the world had gone silent, just the four of them in their own little bubble. They were ready. The large screen in front of them lit up with the final challenge. The problem was complicated, more intricate than anything they had seen before, involving multiple steps and a high level of abstraction. Jamal's heart skipped a beat. It was everything they had prepared for, and yet, something about it felt different. It was designed to push them to their limits. Without a word, Jamal dove in, reading the problem carefully. His mind clicked into gear. He could feel his teammates beside him, working through the calculations, discussing strategies, and writing down their thoughts. "Okay," Jamal said, his voice steady, "we need to break this down into smaller parts. Maya, can you check the assumptions in the first paragraph? Eli, start working on the first equation. Avery, look for any hidden patterns in the data we have." They fell into their rhythm, moving with purpose. Every second counted. They were no longer just a group of individuals, they were a team, unified in purpose. The pressure was on, but they had faced worse before. Minutes passed, each one ticking away, the clock flashing relentlessly. Every now and then, Jamal glanced at the screen, at the number of minutes remaining. They had made progress, but there was still so much to do. The task was immense. The solution seemed like it was on the edge of their grasp, but the closer they got, the more complicated it became. Jamal could see it in his teammates' faces, they were all feeling it. Maya's eyes were intense, her mind racing through the possibilities, while Eli was murmuring to himself, adjusting the numbers in his head. Avery had become a quiet, focused force, scribbling equations furiously. "Wait," Avery said suddenly, interrupting the silence. "There's a pattern here. I think we're overcomplicating it." Jamal's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" Avery tapped the screen, pointing to a section of the problem that none of them had paid much attention to before. "Look at this. If we simplify the approach and focus on this variable first, we can bypass several unnecessary steps. We've been looking at it wrong." Maya's eyes widened. "Avery, that's it. We don't need to overthink it. Let's follow his lead." Jamal felt a rush of excitement. They weren't just solving a problem anymore, they were figuring it out as a team. They had stumbled, but they had found a way forward together. "Let's do it," Jamal said, his voice filled with determination. They worked together, faster now, pushing through the remaining steps with a new clarity. The tension in the room was thick, but there was something else now, a quiet confidence, the belief that they could pull this off. With every step, Jamal could feel himself growing. His hands weren't shaking anymore. The doubts had been replaced with focus and trust in his team. They had failed once, but now, they had something even more important: experience. They knew what it took to rise from the ashes. They had learned how to handle failure, how to work together under pressure, and how to keep pushing forward no matter what. With just seconds left, they reached the final step. Jamal quickly entered the last calculation into the computer, then hit the submit button. The clock ran out. The gymnasium fell silent. For what seemed like an eternity, no one moved, as if the world was holding its breath. Finally, the announcer spoke. Team 7 has submitted their solution with time to spare. Let's see how they did. The screen in front of them flashed to life. The solution was displayed, and Jamal could feel his heart in his throat. They had done it. They had nailed it. Team 7, the announcer said with a smile, congratulations. Your solution is correct. You have completed the final round successfully. Jamal couldn't believe it. A wave of relief washed over him, followed by an overwhelming sense of pride. They had done it. They had proved that failure wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The room erupted in applause. Jamal looked at his teammates. Maya was grinning, Avery was clapping Eli on the back, and even Eli had a proud smile on his face. Jamal stood there, breathing deeply, feeling the full weight of what they had accomplished. He wasn't just proud of the victory. He was proud of how far they had come together, how much they had learned about themselves, and about each other. This wasn't just a competition anymore. It was a testament to their growth, to the bond they had forged through all the struggles and setbacks. As they stepped off the stage, Jamal turned to his teammates, his voice filled with gratitude. We did it. We stuck together. And we won. Maya laughed, throwing her arms around him. We really did. This feels unreal. Avery nodded. We couldn't have done it without each other. We made it through the hardest part by working together. Jamal smiled. This is just the beginning. We've learned something today, something we'll carry with us for the rest of our lives. The morning after the final round, Jamal sat quietly at his desk, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The victory from the night before still felt surreal. His fingers hovered above the keyboard as he scrolled through the messages of congratulations flooding his phone, his social media pages exploding with posts from friends, family, and classmates. The team had pulled through. They had overcome every obstacle, every moment of doubt. But there was something deeper within him, a feeling that the victory wasn't just about the trophy they'd won or the praise they were getting. It was something more profound. Something internal. He had learned more than just how to solve equations. He had learned about who he was. And what really mattered. It wasn't long before Jamal's phone buzzed again. It was a message from his mom. Hey, I'm proud of you. But don't forget, it's not the result that defines you, but the person you become through the process. You've shown true character, and that's worth more than any award. Jamal smiled, the words resonating deeply within him. His mom was right. Winning the competition had been great, but the journey, the growth, the teamwork, the lessons learned, that was what would stay with him long after the trophy collected dust on a shelf. That afternoon, Jamal and his team met at the local park, a quiet place where they could gather without the pressure of the competition hanging over their heads. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the sky as they sat around a picnic table, their once stressed faces now relaxed and smiling. Well, we did it, Eli said, leaning back in his chair and stretching his arms wide. I still can't believe we actually pulled it off. After all that. I thought we were done for. Maya laughed, nudging him with her elbow. You didn't give up, though. None of us did. We stuck together. I think that's the biggest thing I'm taking away from all this. We couldn't have done it alone. Avery nodded thoughtfully. Yeah. I mean, we've all had our doubts. I know I did. I thought we were going to lose after that first mistake in the first round. But Jamal, you kept us together. You made sure we didn't give up, even when things got tough. Jamal shook his head, feeling the weight of their words. I couldn't have done it without all of you. We were in this together. And we learned together. Every failure, every mistake we made, brought us closer. It taught me that even when things feel like they're falling apart, we've got to keep pushing. Keep believing in each other. There was a brief silence as each of them thought about the journey they had been on. The way they had supported each other through every high and every low. Honestly, I'm just glad it's over, Maya said, breaking the silence. But I've got to admit, I've learned more from this than I ever did in any class. This was real. This was life. Jamal smiled at her. Yeah, this wasn't just about math. It was about learning how to face challenges, how to grow stronger even when things don't go the way you plan. As they continued to talk and reflect, Jamal realized something important. The competition had been a test of their skills, their determination, and their ability to come together as a team. But the real victory wasn't just about winning the competition, it was about how they had transformed along the way. They had gone from a group of individuals, uncertain of their abilities, to a team that was united, that trusted each other and was able to push through setbacks, failures, and doubts. They had learned that the most important thing wasn't always the end result, it was the strength they had built together. That evening, Jamal sat on the edge of his bed, thinking back to the first day of the competition, the fear and anxiety that had gripped him when he had seen how high the stakes were. He had felt out of place, unsure if he belonged. But now, after everything, he understood that sometimes the hardest challenges are the ones that shape us the most. He had been tested in ways he never imagined, not just as a student but as a person. The lessons he had learned were worth far more than any trophy. And as he reflected on the journey, he realized that the success he had achieved was not just about proving something to others, it was about proving something to himself. The next day, Jamal met with his teammates again, and they all agreed to take some time to reflect on what had happened. But as they parted ways, he couldn't help but think of the bigger picture. This was just one chapter in his life. There would be other challenges, other victories and failures, but what mattered most was the way he faced them. With strength, with perseverance, and with the people he cared about. As Jamal walked home that day, the world felt different. It was as if everything had shifted. He didn't need external validation anymore. He had earned something much more valuable, his own confidence. He had found his voice. And he knew that whatever came next, he was ready. The next week, Jamal stood in front of his math class, handing in his final project to his teacher. As he passed it to her, she smiled and gave him a nod of approval. It wasn't the award-winning solution from the competition, but it was his best work, and that was enough. As the class ended, his teacher pulled him aside. Jamal, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. Your growth this year has been incredible. Not just in math, but in everything. Keep believing in yourself. Jamal nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment settle inside him. Thank you, Ms. Harris. I will. That afternoon, Jamal sat at his desk, reviewing the notes from his last round of the competition. As he looked over the problems and solutions they had worked through, he realized something. The competition wasn't just a learning experience for him, it had been a journey of growth, not just for him but for all of them. It was about facing challenges head-on, learning from mistakes, and supporting each other when the going got tough. As he closed his notebook, Jamal smiled. He was ready for whatever came next. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he also knew that he could face it with confidence. Because now, more than ever, he understood, it wasn't about being perfect. It was about rising after every fall, trusting yourself, and having the courage to keep moving forward. It was a week after the competition ended, and Jamal sat at his desk in his room, staring out the window. The world outside was moving at its usual pace, but for Jamal, everything felt different. The pressure of the competition was gone, and now it was time to think about what came next. He wasn't just looking forward to the end of the school year anymore, he was thinking about what the future held, what he could achieve, and how he would continue to grow. That afternoon, his phone buzzed with a new message from Avery. Jamal smiled as he opened it. Hey, I've been thinking. What if we started something together? Like a project? Something bigger than just math, something that could really make a difference. Let's talk. Jamal leaned back in his chair, mulling over Avery's message. The idea of starting something new felt exciting. After everything they had gone through, the thought of taking their teamwork and applying it to something beyond just a competition seemed like the natural next step. Maybe they could use everything they'd learned in a way that could have a lasting impact. He quickly typed a reply, "I'm in. Let's meet tomorrow and talk about it. I've got some ideas too." The next day, Jamal, Avery, Maya, and Eli gathered at the park again. The air was warmer now, and the school year was starting to wind down. As they sat around their usual picnic table, Jamal could feel the buzz of excitement in the air. "I've been thinking about what we could do," Avery began, his voice steady with purpose. "We all have something we're passionate about. What if we combined that passion with what we learned in the competition? Math isn't just about equations, it's about problem solving, strategy, and creativity. What if we started a community initiative? We could tutor younger students, help them develop their problem-solving skills, and show them how math can be fun and useful, not just something to be feared." Jamal's eyes lit up. It was exactly what he had been thinking about. "That's brilliant," he said. "We could also do workshops, maybe even outreach events to show people how math can help them in real-life situations. It's not just about numbers, it's about the mindset. We could teach kids how to use problem-solving skills in everything they do." Maya smiled. "I love it. I think it would be great to help other students. We could even create a website with resources, tips, and tutorials to make learning math less intimidating." Eli leaned forward, his usual seriousness replaced by a sense of enthusiasm. "And we could offer our tutoring services for free. It's all about giving back to the community, right? Especially helping those who don't always have access to resources." The group spent the next few hours brainstorming ideas, sketching out plans, and imagining the possibilities. The more they talked about it, the more the vision began to take shape. They weren't just students anymore, they were a team with a purpose. A team that had learned from its mistakes and was ready to make a difference. By the time they left the park, they had a clear plan in mind. They would start by offering tutoring at their school and expanding from there. They would create a website and social media pages to reach a wider audience, providing helpful resources and tips for students struggling with math. They would host community events, inviting younger students to attend workshops and experience math in a new, fun way. As Jamal walked home that day, he couldn't shake the feeling of excitement. This was it. This was their new beginning. It wasn't just about winning competitions anymore, it was about making a real impact in their community. And for Jamal, that felt even more rewarding than any trophy. The next few weeks flew by. The team worked tirelessly, meeting after school to plan, organize, and create the foundation for their community initiative. They designed a website, posted videos of fun math challenges, and shared their personal stories about how they overcame their own struggles with math. Jamal was amazed at how quickly everything came together. They were building something that could truly change the way people saw math, and in doing so, they were changing their own lives. One evening, as they sat in Jamal's living room, reviewing their plans for the first community workshop, Maya spoke up. "You know, this whole experience has made me realize something," she said, looking around at the group. "We didn't just learn math in this process. We learned how to work together, how to trust each other, and how to stay focused even when things were tough. This project, it's more than just about helping others. It's about helping ourselves too." Jamal nodded. "I couldn't have said it better. We've grown so much through all of this. And now, we're doing something that matters. Something that will leave a legacy." The day of their first workshop arrived, and Jamal couldn't help but feel a rush of nervous energy. They had promoted it at school and online, and now they were about to meet their first group of students. The event was held in the school's library, and as they set up the tables, he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. But when the students began to arrive, Jamal immediately noticed something: their faces were full of curiosity. They weren't afraid of math, they were excited to learn. The energy in the room was infectious, and Jamal felt a deep sense of pride as he looked at his teammates. "I can't believe this is happening," Avery said, adjusting the materials on the table. "I know, right?" Eli added. "But this is real. This is something that's going to make a difference." The workshop began with Jamal leading an icebreaker activity. They asked the students to solve a simple problem, but instead of just giving them the answer, they worked through the steps together, showing them how to break down a problem and think critically. The students' eyes lit up as they realized that math didn't have to be scary. It was about the process, the strategy, and the teamwork. As the day went on, Jamal watched as his teammates interacted with the students, explaining concepts, offering encouragement, and building relationships. They were no longer just a group of high schoolers, they were mentors, leaders, and role models. When the workshop ended, Jamal felt something deep inside him. It was more than just pride. It was fulfillment. They had started something that could change lives, including their own. Later that night, as Jamal lay in bed, reflecting on the day, he realized just how far he had come. The competition, the challenges, and the lessons they had learned along the way had led to this moment. It wasn't about proving something to others anymore, it was about giving back, about making a difference. And he knew that this was only the beginning. The first few weeks of their community initiative had been a whirlwind. The workshops had been successful, and Jamal's team had already begun to build a solid reputation. They were receiving positive feedback from both students and parents, and the website they created was starting to gain traction. It was everything they had hoped for, and more. But as with every project that starts to gain momentum, new challenges soon followed. The excitement of the initial success began to fade as they encountered roadblocks they hadn't anticipated. It started with the website. Jamal and his teammates had worked tirelessly to make it user-friendly and engaging, but traffic to the site was beginning to stagnate. They had promoted it heavily through their school, social media, and word of mouth, but for some reason, they weren't getting the kind of traffic they had hoped for. One afternoon, as Jamal sat in his room, reviewing the website analytics on his laptop, a thought crossed his mind. What are we missing? We have all the right resources, but why isn't it reaching more people? Avery had joined him for their usual brainstorming session, and after looking over the stats, he said, "It's the engagement. We're posting great content, but we need something more. Something interactive. We can't just give them lessons, we need to make it personal." Jamal nodded, thinking about it. "I see what you mean. Maybe we need to start featuring real-life stories. Students who have struggled with math but overcame it with the help of our workshops. Personal stories are powerful. It makes the learning feel real." They began brainstorming new ways to make their website and workshops more interactive. Avery suggested creating live webinars where students could ask questions in real time, and Maya thought it would be helpful to include challenges where students could earn rewards for completing math problems. The team had always been focused on teaching, but now they were focused on building a community, a space where students felt like they belonged. But it wasn't just the website that presented challenges. As they moved forward with their project, Jamal began to notice something else: tension within the team. While they all shared the same goal, the pressures of balancing school, the project, and personal lives started to strain their relationships. They were used to working together on problems, but now they had to face the bigger challenges that came with running a growing project. One evening, as the team gathered for a meeting, the stress was palpable. Eli, who had always been the quiet one, suddenly spoke up. "I feel like I'm doing everything. I'm the one handling the website updates, the social media posts, the flyers. What's everyone else doing?" Maya, who had been managing the tutoring sessions, frowned. "Eli, we're all working hard. It's not just on you. I'm teaching the kids, coordinating the workshops, making sure everything is running smoothly." We all have our responsibilities. Avery jumped in, his voice raised, we're all stressed. Everyone's juggling schoolwork, the project, and personal issues. But we can't let this fall apart because we're too overwhelmed to communicate. Jamal could feel the tension in the room growing. It wasn't just about the project anymore, it was about the strain on their friendships, the way their personal lives were starting to collide with their goals. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Okay, let's take a step back. I think we need to reassess everything. We're not going to get anywhere if we keep arguing and pushing each other. We've got to figure out a way to balance everything. For the next hour, they sat in silence, each of them reflecting on the situation. It was clear that they were all struggling, but the most important thing was to not let this unravel everything they had worked so hard for. Jamal could sense that the team's biggest challenge wasn't just the work itself, it was about finding harmony between their personal lives and the project. We need a plan, Jamal said finally, his voice steady. We need to divide the work in a way that makes sense. We can't expect one person to carry everything. We need to support each other, and that means trusting one another to take on tasks and hold each other accountable. Avery nodded. You're right. I've been trying to do everything on my own. I'll focus more on the planning side of things, the long-term strategy. I'll leave the website and social media to you, Jamal, since you've been doing such a great job with it. Maya, I know you're working hard on the workshops, but maybe you could also help us brainstorm ways to get students more involved in the online activities. Maya agreed. I think we can make the workshops more fun and engaging, maybe add in some challenges or group work. And we should definitely get the students involved in creating some of the content for the website. Jamal looked around the table. Great. It's all about teamwork. We can't do this alone, and we shouldn't have to. We need to communicate more, make sure everyone is clear on what needs to be done. The next few weeks were a period of trial and error. They worked to refine their approach, revisiting old ideas and testing out new strategies. They restructured the website to make it more interactive, adding quizzes, challenges, and a Student of the Month feature that celebrated those who showed the most improvement. They also started holding weekly live sessions where students could ask questions and discuss what they were struggling with in real time. And slowly, things began to turn around. The traffic on the website began to climb again, and the workshops grew in popularity. The students started coming back not just for the tutoring, but for the sense of community they were building. Jamal could see the impact it was having on them, and he couldn't help but feel proud of how far they had come. But it wasn't just about the success of their project. Through these challenges, Jamal had learned something important. Growth wasn't just about results, it was about resilience, adaptation, and the strength to push through difficult times. Their ability to communicate openly, trust each other, and share the workload was what kept them going, even when things seemed overwhelming. As the weeks passed, the team continued to grow stronger. The obstacles they faced didn't seem so daunting anymore, because they knew how to handle them. And for Jamal, the most important lesson of all was that success didn't come easy. It took effort, it took vulnerability, and it took a willingness to face the tough moments head-on. One evening, as Jamal sat on the porch, watching the sun set, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had come a long way, not just as a student, but as a person. He wasn't the same Jamal who had walked into that competition months ago, unsure of his place. He was stronger now, more confident in himself and in his team. And as he looked ahead, he knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. It had been months since Jamal and his team first set out on their mission to change the way students viewed math. They had grown as individuals and as a group, overcoming obstacles that seemed impossible in the beginning. But as their initiative gained more attention, they were about to face their biggest challenge yet. One Thursday afternoon, just as Jamal was finishing a tutoring session, his phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "We need to talk about something important. Can you meet at the park after school?" Jamal felt a pang of unease in his chest. Maya's messages were usually brief, but this one sounded different, urgent. He quickly responded with a thumbs up and put his phone down, but the thought lingered in his mind all afternoon. What was going on? After school, Jamal made his way to the park. As he walked towards their usual spot by the picnic tables, he saw Maya and Avery already sitting there, waiting. Eli wasn't with them. That only made Jamal's nerves spike further. "Hey, Jamal," Maya greeted him with a tight smile. "Thanks for coming." Jamal sat down next to them, trying to hide his concern. "What's going on? Where's Eli?" Avery ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. Eli's not happy with how things are going with the project. He's been feeling overwhelmed, and honestly, I think we've been pushing him too hard." Jamal frowned. "What do you mean?" "Eli's always been one of the hardest workers in the group." "I know," Maya said, looking down at her hands. "But I think we've all been so focused on getting the project off the ground that we didn't realize how much stress it was putting on him. He's been burning the candle at both ends, school, the project, everything, and now. I think he's close to breaking." Jamal's heart sank. He couldn't imagine Eli being close to his breaking point. Eli had always been the steady force in their group, the one who rarely complained and always kept his head down and got things done. But this was different. Jamal realized that, while they had all been working hard, they had neglected to check in on each other as people, not just team members. "So what do we do now?" Jamal asked, his voice low. "We can't let Eli walk away from this. He's too important to the project, and to us." Avery leaned back in his chair, staring at the ground. "I've tried talking to him, but he's not really opening up. I think he feels like he's not being heard. He's been frustrated for a while now, and I think this is the breaking point. I don't know how to fix it." Maya sighed, looking around at the park. "I think we need to address it head-on. We've been so focused on growing the initiative that we've forgotten to focus on ourselves as a team. Maybe we need to have a real conversation about how we're feeling, and what we all need from this project, beyond just the work itself." Jamal nodded. He knew Maya was right. This wasn't just about math or the project anymore. It was about the group, their relationships, and their mental well-being. If they were going to succeed, they needed to be in sync, not just as a team but as friends who cared about each other's emotional and mental health. "I'll talk to Eli," Jamal said, determination in his voice. "I know he's not great at talking about his feelings, but we have to show him that this project is not just about the end goal. It's about all of us, and that includes taking care of each other." After their meeting, Jamal texted Eli, asking if they could meet. A few minutes later, Eli replied with a simple, "Okay." Jamal felt the weight of the conversation ahead of him. Later that afternoon, Jamal met Eli at the corner of their neighborhood. Eli's expression was tired, and his shoulders slumped. He had always been the quiet one, but now there was an unmistakable weariness in his eyes. "Hey, man," Jamal said, trying to keep his tone light, "you doing okay?" Eli hesitated for a moment before answering. "I don't know. I've been feeling overwhelmed. It's just a lot, you know. I've got school, the project, my family. It's like I'm always working but never getting a break." Jamal nodded, his heart aching for his friend. "I get it. I do. We've all been going at full speed, trying to make this project a success, but I think we've lost sight of the most important thing: we're a team. We're here for each other. If you're struggling, we need to know." Eli looked away, clearly conflicted. "I just didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle it." Jamal stepped closer, placing a hand on Eli's shoulder. "We're in this together, man. Nobody's going to let you down. Not now, not ever. If you need help, if you need to step back for a little while, that's okay. We'll pick up the slack. The project can't be successful if one of us isn't okay." Eli finally met Jamal's eyes, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Thanks, Jamal. I didn't realize how much I was holding in. I guess I didn't want to seem weak. You're not weak, Jamal said firmly. You're human. And we're all here to support each other. That's what matters. The two of them stood there for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling in. Eli seemed to breathe a little easier now, the tension starting to melt away. Jamal could see the relief in his eyes. Let's go back to the group, Jamal said. We've all been putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it's time to reset. We'll figure out a way to keep things moving forward without burning out. You're not alone in this, Eli. You never were. When they returned to the park, Jamal and Eli shared what had happened. Avery and Maya listened intently, and all of them agreed that they needed to be more mindful of each other's boundaries and mental health. They couldn't just focus on the project, they had to focus on themselves, too. Over the next few weeks, the team made a conscious effort to recalibrate. They worked on finding balance, communicating openly, and making sure that no one felt overwhelmed. They restructured their meetings to include more downtime, and they celebrated each small victory as a group. The project began to feel more like a shared journey, rather than just a race to the finish line. And as they moved forward, Jamal realized something profound. The true success of their initiative wasn't about the workshops, the website, or the growing community of students they were helping. It was about the bond they shared, the way they had learned to rise above their personal struggles and come together as a team. Their project wasn't just changing their community, it was changing them, too. And that, Jamal thought, was the most important change of all. The email hit Jamal's inbox one Friday afternoon, its subject line almost too unbelievable to read: "Congratulations. Your initiative has been selected as a finalist for the National Innovation in Education Award." Jamal blinked, staring at the words on the screen. His heart began to race as he opened the email. The message was clear: their community math project had been recognized as one of the top initiatives in the country. It was a dream come true. They had worked tirelessly, fought through doubts, and now their hard work was finally being acknowledged on a national stage. The email contained the details. They had been invited to present their project at the National Education Summit in Washington, D.C. It was an opportunity to meet with educators, innovators, and policymakers. A chance to showcase their project to some of the most influential people in the field. Not to mention, the winning team would receive a significant grant to help expand their project across the country. Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he read the email aloud to Maya, Avery, and Eli, who were gathered at their usual hangout spot by the park. They all sat in stunned silence, processing the enormity of what this meant. "Is this real?" Eli asked, still in shock. "I mean, a national award? Us?" "I can't believe it," Maya whispered, her eyes wide. "This is huge." Avery grinned. "We've made it, guys. This is the kind of recognition we've only dreamed about." Jamal felt a rush of pride, but also a wave of anxiety. This wasn't just a win, it was a massive step forward. With the national spotlight came pressure. The weight of representing not just their school, but their community and their mission, was suddenly very real. "We've got to get this right," Jamal said, his voice serious. "This is our chance to take this to the next level. We need to prepare. We need to make sure we're ready to show the world what we've built." For the next few days, the team worked non-stop, preparing for the summit. They refined their presentation, practiced their speeches, and made sure everything from the website to their social media presence was polished and professional. The pressure was mounting, but they were determined to give it their all. But as the day of the summit approached, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling of doubt that had started to creep into his mind. He had always been the one to keep the team focused, to push forward despite obstacles. But now, with so much at stake, he wasn't sure he was enough to lead them through this next phase. Late one evening, as Jamal sat alone in his room, staring at the presentation slides on his laptop, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Avery: "We're ready, but I think we need to talk. You're acting like we're going to fail." You don't have to carry all this on your own. Jamal read the message and felt his heart sink. Avery was right. He had been pushing everyone to prepare, but he hadn't been honest about his own feelings. He hadn't let himself express the pressure he was feeling, because he didn't want to let anyone down. He quickly typed a response, "I'm sorry. You're right. I guess I've been so focused on making sure we succeed that I haven't been real with you guys." Within minutes, Avery called. "Jamal, we've got this. The pressure is there, sure. But we've already done the hard part. This project is about more than just us, it's about helping others. It's not about winning. It's about making a difference. We've made a difference already." Jamal felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Avery was right. They had already done something incredible, something that was already changing lives. Whether they won the award or not didn't matter as much as the impact they had made. It was time to stop carrying the burden alone and trust his team. They were all in this together. The day of the summit arrived. Jamal, Avery, Maya, and Eli boarded the plane to Washington, D.C., a mix of excitement and nervous energy surrounding them. As the plane flew over the city, Jamal looked out the window, thinking about how far they had come. This wasn't just a trip, it was the culmination of everything they had worked for. When they arrived at the convention center, they were greeted by hundreds of other finalists. Teachers, students, and innovators from across the country were there, each showcasing their own projects. Jamal could feel the energy in the air, it was electric. But there was also a sense of competition. Every group wanted to stand out. Every group wanted to win. The team had a few hours before they had to present, so they took the time to tour the exhibits and see what other groups had been working on. Some of the projects were impressive, cutting-edge technologies, innovative classroom techniques, and new approaches to education. Jamal was in awe of the talent surrounding them, but at the same time, it made him wonder if they were truly ready. When it was finally their turn to present, Jamal stood at the front of the room, facing an audience of educators, journalists, and industry leaders. His heart raced as he looked at the faces in front of him. They were there to judge, to assess, to decide if their project was worthy of the award. Maya went first, speaking passionately about their mission to make math more accessible for students. Avery followed, detailing the success of their workshops and the impact they had already made in their community. Eli shared the challenges they had faced and how overcoming those obstacles had made them stronger as a team. And then it was Jamal's turn. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. This was it, the moment he had been working toward for so long. "I've learned a lot throughout this project," Jamal began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When we started, we were just a group of high school students trying to help others. But what we didn't realize is that we were going to help ourselves, too. We learned that education is more than just textbooks and tests. It's about building confidence, community, and hope. We learned that success doesn't come from winning, it comes from the impact you have on others. And that's what we're most proud of." As Jamal finished, he could feel the weight of their words hanging in the room. The silence was thick for a moment, and then the applause began. It was slow at first, hesitant, but then it grew louder. The audience recognized something genuine in their words, something real. They had done it. No matter what happened next, they had already won. They had made a difference. As the day came to a close, Jamal and his team walked away from the podium, their heads held high. The award was still to be decided, but they already knew that their project was far more than just a competition. It was a movement. It was their legacy. The tension in the air was palpable as Jamal and his team sat in the vast auditorium at the National Education Summit, waiting for the announcement. The air buzzed with excitement and nervous energy, but for Jamal, it felt like the whole world had slowed down. The speeches were over, the presentations had been made, and now all they could do was wait for the final moment, the moment they would find out if they had won the National Innovation in Education Award. Jamal glanced at his friends. Maya sat next to him, her fingers drumming nervously on the armrest. Avery leaned forward with a furrowed brow, and Eli, ever the quiet one, was staring at the stage with an intensity that matched Jamal's own. Despite the overwhelming sense of pride they felt in what they had accomplished, there was still that lingering uncertainty. They had given everything to this project, but would it be enough? Next up, the announcer's voice echoed over the microphone, is the award for the most innovative community-driven education initiative. This year's finalists are, the Math Revolution Project, Code for Change, and Project Spark. Jamal's heart skipped a beat. They were up against some stiff competition. Code for Change was a non-profit organization that used coding boot camps to help underserved youth in urban areas, and Project Spark was a community-driven program that focused on early childhood education. Both were groundbreaking initiatives. But Jamal knew that what they had done with the Math Revolution Project was just as powerful. They had not only changed the way students viewed math, but they had also helped to create a sense of belonging and hope for so many young people who had struggled. As the announcer continued to list the finalists, Jamal felt the weight of the moment sink in. They had made it this far. That, in itself, was a victory. But if they won, he couldn't help but wonder how it would change everything. The announcer's voice cut through Jamal's thoughts. And the winner of the 2025 National Innovation in Education Award is the Math Revolution Project. There was a beat of stunned silence, and then the room erupted in applause. Jamal's mind went blank. For a moment, he couldn't believe it. They had won. Their team, their project, had just been recognized as one of the most innovative education initiatives in the country. Maya let out a shocked laugh, covering her mouth, while Avery jumped to his feet, whooping in excitement. Eli's face broke into a wide grin, his usual stoic demeanor melting away. Jamal felt his heart race as he stood up, his legs trembling slightly. It was happening, this was real. The four of them made their way to the stage, the spotlight now on them as they walked down the aisle to accept the award. As Jamal stepped up to the podium, the weight of the gold-plated trophy in his hands felt heavy, but it was a weight he would gladly carry. The announcer handed him the microphone. Congratulations, Jamal, Maya, Avery, and Eli. You've just earned the 2025 National Innovation in Education Award. How does it feel? Jamal took a deep breath, still processing the whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. Honestly, it feels surreal, he said, his voice a little shaky. We never set out to win an award. We just wanted to help other students, especially those who feel like they don't belong in the classroom. Math is something that many students struggle with, and we wanted to make it something that was fun, exciting, and accessible to everyone. But winning this award, it just feels like the beginning of something even bigger. Maya took the microphone next. When we first started this project, we didn't know what we were getting into. But we knew that we wanted to change the narrative around education, especially for students who often feel invisible. This award isn't just for us. It's for every student who has ever felt like they couldn't succeed, who has struggled with math or with school in general. This is for you. Avery spoke next, his voice strong and confident. We've learned that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, patience, and a whole lot of determination. But if you stick together, if you support each other, you can accomplish anything. This award is proof of that. Finally, Eli, who had been quiet the entire time, stepped forward. He cleared his throat, his voice a little hesitant at first. I've always been the quiet one, he began, but this project taught me that sometimes, you need to step out of your comfort zone. I'm not the loudest person in the room, but I've learned that my voice matters. Our voices matter. And we can make a difference. The audience erupted in applause once again, and Jamal felt a lump in his throat. He could barely believe it, but the realization hit him, this was bigger than any of them. This project wasn't just about teaching math or getting an award. It was about proving that anyone, no matter their background or struggles, could make a difference in the world. As they left the stage with their trophy, Jamal couldn't help but smile. They had done it. They had not only succeeded in their mission to help other students, but they had also transformed themselves along the way. The friendships they had built, the lessons they had learned, and the way they had grown as individuals, none of that could ever be taken away. But as they headed back to their seats, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. This was just the beginning. With the recognition they had gained, the opportunities ahead of them were limitless. They had a responsibility now, not just to their community, but to the countless students across the country who needed to hear their story. As the summit came to a close, Jamal and his team had a moment to reflect on everything they had accomplished. The trip had been a whirlwind, but as they stood together, looking at their award, Jamal realized something important. They hadn't just built a project. They had built a movement. A movement that would change the way people thought about education and the power of perseverance, teamwork, and hope. The conference ended with a closing keynote by one of the most respected education advocates in the country. Jamal, Maya, Avery, and Eli sat together in the front row, exhausted but exhilarated. Their minds were buzzing with new ideas and possibilities. The trophy they'd received earlier in the day sat on the table in front of them, a physical reminder of their success, but also of the road ahead. As the speaker wrapped up the final remarks and the audience began to file out of the auditorium, Jamal's phone buzzed. It was a message from their teacher, Ms. Jackson. "Congratulations, team. I've just received an email from the school district. They want to meet with us about expanding your project to other schools in the district. They're incredibly impressed by what you've done." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. Their success wasn't just a one-time recognition, it was opening doors. Big doors. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Maya said, reading over his shoulder. Her voice was tinged with excitement and disbelief. "We could be helping hundreds of schools. Maybe thousands. Think about the impact." "I can't even wrap my head around it," Avery said. "From where we started, I never imagined this would happen. It feels like a dream." Eli, ever the pragmatist, looked thoughtful. "We've come a long way, but we still need to focus. There's a lot of work ahead. We can't let this award distract us from the bigger picture." Jamal nodded, his mind racing. He had learned over the past year that it was easy to get caught up in the excitement of success. But the work wasn't over. This recognition was just a platform, a stepping stone to something even greater. What they had built needed to grow, to spread, to make a lasting difference. Later that evening, the team gathered in their hotel room to discuss their next steps. The excitement of the day had started to settle into a more focused determination. Jamal pulled out his notebook, where he had started to sketch out ideas for how to scale their project. They couldn't just keep it within their school, they needed to reach more students, more communities, and inspire a change in how math was taught everywhere. "We have the tools now," Jamal said, looking at his team. "We have the recognition, the funding, and the support. But we need a plan. We need to think bigger. What if we could partner with more schools, not just in this district, but nationwide? We could create an online platform," Maya suggested. "One that offers free resources, interactive lessons, and even virtual workshops. That way, anyone, anywhere can access what we've created." "That's a great idea," Avery agreed. "We could start with a pilot program in a few schools, then build out from there. Eventually, we could have our own nonprofit that works with schools and communities to provide training and resources." Jamal felt a surge of energy. "Exactly. And we could bring in other students and teachers who are passionate about this to be part of the process. The more people we involve, the more impact we'll have." Eli leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "We'll need a solid structure to make sure the programs are sustainable. If we want this to work long-term, we have to think about how to manage growth, how to train new leaders, and how to keep the project running even as we move on to college." Jamal nodded, feeling a sense of purpose settle in his chest. They were already thinking ahead. This wasn't just about a project or an award anymore. It was about creating something lasting. Something that could continue to change lives for years to come. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning, meetings, and strategic thinking. The school district didn't just want to partner, they were offering funding, logistical support, and access to other schools in the area. As Jamal and his team worked to create a more formalized version of their Math Revolution project, they faced new challenges. They had to learn how to run a nonprofit organization, navigate the complexities of public education, and build partnerships with other educators and institutions. But despite the obstacles, Jamal felt more confident than ever. They were not alone in this. There were educators, mentors, and supporters all around them, eager to help them succeed. Together, they were building something that was bigger than any of them could have imagined. By the time they returned home, the project had taken on a life of its own. Their social media presence had exploded, with students and teachers from all over the country reaching out to learn more about the project and how they could implement it in their own schools. Jamal's phone was constantly buzzing with new messages, emails, and opportunities. It was overwhelming, but it was also exhilarating. Then came the email that would take them to the next level. Dear Jamal and the Math Revolution team, we are pleased to inform you that your initiative has been selected as one of the featured projects at the 2025 National Education Conference. This is a prestigious opportunity to share your work with even more educators, policymakers, and innovators. We would be honored to have you represent the future of education. The email was a game changer. They had been invited to present on a national stage. This was their chance to not just continue the work they had started, but to inspire a movement on a much larger scale. They were no longer just a group of high school students. They were pioneers, educators, and changemakers. As they prepared for the conference, Jamal found himself reflecting on how much they had accomplished. A year ago, they had been a small team with a big idea. Now, they were on the brink of something monumental. But as he looked at the faces of his friends, he knew that they hadn't just built a project, they had built a legacy. The day of the conference arrived. The team stood in front of a crowd of thousands of educators, students, and industry leaders, ready to share their story. Jamal spoke first, his voice confident as he outlined the vision and mission of the Math Revolution project. Maya followed, sharing the successes and challenges they had faced, while Avery and Eli spoke about the personal growth they had experienced along the way. We started with a dream, Jamal concluded, but what we've learned is that education is about more than just learning facts. It's about empowering students to believe in themselves, to take ownership of their future, and to inspire others. Our work doesn't stop here. It's just the beginning. The applause that followed was deafening. But for Jamal and his team, the applause wasn't the point. The real reward was in the lives they had touched, the minds they had opened, and the future they were helping to build. As they left the stage, Jamal couldn't help but smile. They had made it. But more than that, they had started something that would outlast them. The Math Revolution project was no longer just their project, it was a movement, a revolution in education. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?